The question he has asked is that if in order to believe properly, you need to have curiosity within you. You need to have questions that when you have in your mind and you read the Quran and you get proper answers to them, uh, you begin to understand and believe. But what about the kids? They don't have those questions. And I said to him that don't ask me difficult questions. Um, my response is, and as yet I've not been successful, but I still believe. And you know, the reason why I find myself not successful is there are so many distractions for them. When I'm talking about the present day, you know, that it's so difficult to attract their interest and attention. But I think it still is possible. I mean, I can tell you about a few kids who, if they are given this comfort, confidence, that no matter what question comes to your mind, feel free. And even if you don't have answers, just politely address them. Admit that you don't have an answer and say, okay, that's a great question. Let's keep thinking about it. I think there is a way to actually create interest in kids regarding these important questions about life. Honestly, I have a feeling that they are more likely to be interested in those questions. You know why? Because people like me, we have done enough wrongs in our life to have barriers within us to understand the truth. The Quran is very clear about the fact, and that is what worries me, honestly, that the Quran claims that it's a book of guidance for the entire humankind. But it is also clear from the Quran that it's a book that's going to guide only those people who are good humans, you know, who have whose inner soul has not been contaminated by their evil deeds and wrong attitude. So kids are pure. Yeah, they have distractions. That's their problem. But honestly, if we give them this liberty, freedom to ask, which sadly many of us don't do because we don't have answers, and we are arrogant. We have this ego. We don't want to admit that there are questions for which we don't have answers. And there's another problem. The other problem is that some of those questions are great questions, and there are answers that are there in the Quran, but our concepts are wrong. I mean, for instance, you see, if a kid asks this question, I'm just going to mention the question. I'm not going to mention the answer. You say that it all started from Adam and Eve, and you say that it's probably 10, 12,000 years old story. But what we now understand from almost certain knowledge of fossils, that human existence is very old, hundreds and thousands of years old. So how would you reconcile? And you know what the typical answer would be? Shut up. Keep your mouth shut. Are you questioning faith? When you're going to do that kind of stuff, how would you expect the intelligent kids of our times to be interested? So I do feel, although I admitted that I've not been supremely successful in that particular area. Um, I believe that there's a way of doing it. And well, I started telling them stories. That too really has not been supremely successful. But um, when you tell the Quranic stories, um, while we are talking about them, they do raise questions. And I think we need to create within them a taste for understanding the Quran through asking questions. Probably my sample, the one that I'm going through, is not the best of the samples. It's not a representative sample of kids because the kind of kids that I'm teaching, they all come from religious families and they have all already been indoctrinated with their religious views. So, it's very difficult to unlearn what you've already learned. A couple of days ago, there was a bright student of mine. He said, what do you do if you start getting a feeling that what your parents are telling you is not the right understanding? But I said, just deal with it, be polite to them, uh, don't say anything that would be disrespectful, but tell your parents that, look here, what you're saying is not making sense. So, I have a feeling. I know at least a few kids who really ask brilliant questions. I mean, questions which I would never come up with. I remember there was an occasion in Pakistan when I was invited to talk to a few students, who had done their uh, higher school education. That they were going to UK for further studies, and the parents were worried. Um, so they wanted a Maulvi like me to go to say a few things to them. And I said a few things to them. It being my profession, I had no other choice. And I could see on their faces complete lack of interest. I don't blame them. So I finished my business. And then the hosts, they invited me to tea. And I said that's a much better activity that I'm going to get engaged in. While we were having tea, uh, we got a message from the kids. Can we meet uncle alone? And I told the parents that, this is going to be a really good session. In front of you, they would dare not ask any question. And my goodness, the kind of questions, they're all girls, kind of questions they asked. I mean, they could not have asked those questions before their parents, because we've created a scare. We don't encourage our kids to be freely communicating with us. And if you are living in Pakistan or any other Muslim country and they are scared, it's understandable. And you've come to the West to live here. And yet you're not allowing them to ask questions and not trying to help them understand what your religion is telling you with arguments. And what are you doing? Tomorrow they are going to be just out there, with others. They will be interacting with them. They will know other points of view. And if you're not going to give them the proper understanding and orientation of your religion and the right approach towards understanding religious arguments, I think then it's going to be really problematic. They are either going to become religious extremists, which is one way. By the way, this is one way out. You become so strict that you start hating everybody else and say, we are the only right people and they're all evil people. That's a way of continuing to stay religious. But that's not the right approach. The other way, the right way, is to talk about these questions and to keep thinking about it. And while we are doing all this, to read the Quran with an open mind and to understand it. And I can assure you that if you and they do it, they will never find the Quran disappointing.
Here's a question. Assalamu alaikum.
Right now.
From Germany. My question is, what about having doubts hereafter? When I say, okay, it may be, but what is? I'm hesitating to believe in hereafter. What can? Which delil, which arguments can I take from Quran? Only the natural one you mentioned. The nature is dying and giving again life after death in the winter and so on. or do we have some other arguments, like philosophical or rational?
Okay.
Can you?
Yeah, for one thing, I would say that don't think that if you have doubts, it's a problem. You are using your intellect and you must continue using it. But tell yourself, remind yourself over and over again that I will not remain stuck to one position, even if the other point of view is begins to make sense to me. I'm telling you that is the biggest problem with religious people as well as non-religious people. That when we engage ourselves in a discussion, we try to defend our point of view, our position, come what may. That is what I call intellectual dishonesty. Uh, I can't accuse you of being one who is doing it, nor can you accuse me of doing it. We don't have any right to doubt the intentions of others. So that's one thing. Uh, you know, the understanding of the life hereafter, whether it makes sense or not, is something that is going to continue to be a matter that you need to think about, question, and discuss with others. Uh, I obviously you have come to this session of mine for the first time. I'll just very briefly tell you what I have talked about in the past 2 or 3 sessions. What I mentioned was that the Quran deals. Question is, why should there be a life hereafter? And the Quran mentions in its different surahs, chapters, that this present worldly life, despite it being brilliant, is incomplete. It doesn't make sense on its own unless there is another life which would compensate for its weaknesses, its flaws. That is what the general principle in this life is. Everything has been made in pairs. So, like every pair has two partners. This life is also a partner of a pair, and the other partner of this pair is the next life. Without the next life, this life is absurd. It's silly. It's cruel. It makes no sense. That's the first argument. I'm just briefly telling you. The second point that the Quran mentions is that if you believe in God, then you ought to believe in life hereafter. Because if you believe in God, you believe in a being who is fair and just. And how much? To what extent? Completely. He's completely just. All his attributes are perfect, infinite. You believe in God. If you believe in God, you believe in a God. You ought to believe in a God who is wise, whose wisdom is again perfect. You believe in a God, well, then you're believing in someone who is merciful and someone who is providing you with all that you have with you. Again, I mentioned it in one of the sessions that given all these attributes of the Almighty, you can't believe it, these attributes properly. You can't satisfy yourself unless you have a clear understanding of another life. So that's the part of why should there be a life hereafter. Then the next question that the Quran addresses is how is it possible? And I talked about it today. There are two questions uh, emerging from this one big question. How is recreation of humans possible? And the other is how would information be made available for the process of accountability to be done in a perfectly just manner. Uh, these questions are not the kind of questions which you, for instance, have in mathematics that you solve them and you get an answer. It takes time. You think about them. You can't immediately reject them, or you can't immediately accept them totally. It's a process wherein we must continue to think about them and ask questions and obviously make our judgment. So, I mean, I would just say that keep thinking, keep asking, keep talking about this concept. Yeah.
Is it allowed further question? Another further question?
You allowed, but there's somebody else who's asking a question. Then I'll come back to you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Please go ahead.
That brings me to the directly to the next question. When the Almighty is fair and justice, what about the reward and the punishment of in the hereafter for a short life, a very, very short life? The danger of getting endless punishment, or as we read in the Quran, Khalidina fiha, in paradise or in the hell. That's one of the main issues I would like to question. Yes,
I think you probably would not have any problems with Khalidina fiha of the paradise. I mean, what is the problem? Let people enjoy. The
that's
real
correct.
problem is the Khalidina fiha of the hell, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You see, let me again briefly mention three points. One point is that the Quran says that whatever the Quran has mentioned in regard to the unseen world, including the paradise and the hell, is all mutashabihat, metaphorical. So that was the only way it could be described. Since we have not seen it, we cannot be described, that understanding, that reality cannot be described literally, because we don't have words for it in our vocabulary. The second point that I would mention is that, your question probably emerges from a principle, which allow me to say is not a valid principle. I'll tell you what. The principle is, I think people imagine that if somebody has done some evil crime over a short period of time, his punishment, if any, should also be spread over a short span of time, equal in duration to the time that the evil was committed. I'm sure that the world of knowledge and practice has not accepted this principle. A person kills another person in a matter of seconds, not even minutes. And it is an accepted fact, accepted principle, that if that person, even if he's not killed, he should be imprisoned over a long period of time. So, one might ask, he killed just in a matter of seconds, and you are imprisoning him for years. So the answer would be that, look at the principle that has given rise to this question is not right. Principle is that the punishment should be commensurate with the crime. The crime, if it's serious, the punishment should be accordingly. And, the length of time in prison for a killer, murderer, is because the killer is confined to the four walls of a prison, to a small cell. But that's not enough for him to be punished against a crime of killing somebody, taking somebody's life. So the duration is prolonged to make some sense out of it. So that's the second thing I would say. The third thing, which worries many people, uh, and I'm thankful to somebody who asked me this question, somebody like you, and said that this eternity is something that I can't understand. It doesn't make sense. And you know what? The Quran mentions that people who are going to be punished in the hell, they are going to be there forever. And then clarifies, for as long as the heavens and the earth would stay, except for what your Lord might decide. Now, this is one verse. What I understand from it is that as far as the hell is concerned, the Almighty has a certain duration in mind. It's a long duration. But that duration, when it's going to come to an end, then the entire project of hell come to an end. Some of them are going to be removed from there and will be taken to the heaven. But others who turned out to be completely good for nothing, their evil was beyond repair, beyond correction. They are going to be punished for until the last duration that is going to be set forth, decided by the Almighty. It's like, in language, it is a style. I keep giving example to my students that if I was to say to a student when I'm teaching at a university which has 8 semesters, and I'm teaching in the first semester, and a student is misbehaving, and if I threaten him that if you're going to continue to misbehave, uh, there's going to be something done against you that will make it known to all students, the entire student body, that you are somebody who is not disciplined. You're not a good person. And this punishment is going to stay with you forever. You know what does forever means here? 8 semesters. So what I'm saying is that sometimes you stress a statement to emphasize upon the people that look here, it's not going to be easy. You are going to be taken to task and you're going to be punished and it's going to be last forever. In other words, for as long as this punishment is going to be determined by the wise, fair, merciful God. Uh, we can keep talking about it, but honestly, let's let's have a communication which we'll have otherwise, outside this particular forum. And I would love to talk to you. I would love to explain my understanding, and I don't claim that what I'm saying would necessarily convince anyone. But allow me to let the other gentleman ask. Ji.
So I will give you enough time for that because as you had said that on a daily basis we invite people for prayer for
Yeah.
if you're kind enough to lead the prayer, that's good for
Right. Okay.
the
So
people. But the question, if we have
yeah. Please. Go
how
on.
did you come to realization or cognition that religion exists and this is this?
Okay. Oh God. Well, he's asking us a question. How did I come to this realization that the religious message is correct and that there is a life hereafter? Honestly, the answer is very simple. It was the death of my father. I was not as yet 19 years old, between 18 to 19. I was very strongly emotionally attached to him. And it was sudden death. And after he had left this world, I had only one question that I was obsessed with. I had no other problem, worry in my life. I just wanted to know one thing. Has he perished or has he been transferred to another world? That was my starting point. And I thank the Almighty that I got so worried. I was so sad that I had no interest for for a certain while in the worldly life, know. And that enabled me to focus on this question and read the Quran and read whatever I could lay my hands on. Um, and it didn't take very long for me to to change my position from being as much an atheist as a teenager could be. Sure, it was a fashion, You used to look good, feel good about it. To somebody who became religious. So my conclusion is that unless this question becomes a real strong, desperate yearning, um, you don't get the right answers. You don't get the kind of answer that is going to really influence you. So it was a very simple process. The rest are the details. So do we say goodbye to? Yes. Thank you very much for being there, ji. Inshallah. I'll next Sunday is Eid, so we'll meet on the 23rd of June, inshallah.